Have you ever loved someone so deeply that even you didn't understand why? Not because they were perfect, not because they were kind to you, but because something about them reminded you of a part of yourself you had long forgotten. Maybe it was their eyes, their voice, or just the way they stayed silent right when you needed someone to listen. Love, according to Carl Jung, is not merely an emotion. It's an inner mirror, reflected back the fragments of our soul we once left behind. And sometimes, the person who moves you the most isn't the one you love, but the one who gives a name to the part of you you've been trying to find again. In this video, you won't just learn more about love. You might end up understanding yourself better. 1. Love is the mirror of the soul we've forgotten. Amanda's story. Autumn in Colorado. The trees burn with vibrant shades of orange and red, and the air is crisp and still, as if the universe itself is whispering softly to those who know how to listen. Amanda, 42, a psychotherapist, attends a 3-day retreat on healing the inner child. After years of listening to others' stories, this time, she comes to listen to her own. During a lunch break in a quiet garden, she catches the eyes of a man, Daniel, salt and pepper hair, a calm gaze filled with sorrow, like a sea that once raged but now lies still. They say little. A few short exchanges, a gentle smile. Yet that night, Amanda can't stop thinking about him. In the days that follow, his presence stirs something deep within her, a sense of longing, a nameless ache. Nearly a year later, during a journaling session, Amanda finally sees it. Daniel reminded her of her father, a quiet, strong man with deep wounds, whom she had once resented and then buried in the furthest corner of memory. But not just that. Daniel also reminded her of her own strength and vulnerability, the part of herself she left behind at 22 after a life-altering trauma. Since then, she had learned to protect herself by retreating inward. Reflection. Carl Jung once said, "Love is not merely the meeting of two people. It is the reunion of parts of the soul once forgotten." We don't fall in love with someone because they are beautiful, successful, or flawless. We fall in love because they awaken something within us. Sometimes a tender memory, sometimes an unhealed wound, and sometimes a lost part of our identity. In its deepest sense, love is not just attraction between two individuals. It is a mirror that reflects the parts of ourselves we've denied, out of fear, out of pain, or simply because life made us forget. And that's what makes love so hauntingly profound. When you meet someone who stirs your soul from the very first moment, perhaps you are not truly meeting them, but reuniting with yourself, with a part of your soul you once hid away. That's why some love stories are short, but unforgettable. Some people pass briefly through your life, yet leave marks that never fade. Not because they are more special than others, but because they touched something sacred inside you, a place not everyone gets to enter. 2. Attraction is a call from the unconscious, but not everyone dares to answer. Leo's story, San Francisco. A quiet Saturday morning. Leo, 34, a street artist who sketches charcoal portraits, is at the Mission District weekend market. He lives slowly, speaks softly, and carries an air of stillness that intrigues those around him. That day, Maya appears. A criminal lawyer, fast-paced, sharp-tongued, as if time itself can't keep up with her. But as she sits down to have her portrait drawn, something changes. She grows unusually quiet. For 20 minutes, they say nothing, just the sound of charcoal on paper, and a few glances exchanged. When the portrait is done, she says only one sentence. "I feel like you just drew a part of me I had forgotten existed." They begin to see each other. Tea walks. Conversations about abandoned dreams. Leo sees not just the hard exterior of a successful woman, but a little girl who once longed to be free, to dream, to be fragile. Maya seems to feel the same, but after only a few weeks, she disappears. No text, no explanation. Leo is left confused, blaming himself. Until one day, he reads a quote by Carl Jung. "We are attracted to those who awaken the buried parts of ourselves. But if we're not ready to face them, we panic and run." Reflection. Some people enter our lives not to stay, but to awaken something that's been asleep within us. True attraction doesn't come from appearance, but from how someone mirrors a deep, hidden part of us, a part we're afraid to look at or tried to bury. That's why some intense loves vanish quickly, not because they were fake, but because they were too real. A relationship like this is like a magical mirror. When you look into it, you don't just see the other person, you see your childhood, your suppressed dreams, your unnamed grief. But not everyone is ready to stand before that mirror. Some walk away, not because you're not good enough, but because you're too real. You touched something they weren't ready to confront. And the truth is, to love someone is to unlock a sealed room within yourself. Some dare to open it, some only linger outside. Love isn't simple, it's a journey of facing yourself through the presence of another. And not everyone is brave enough to walk that path to the end. 3. To love is to see yourself clearly through another. James's story, North Carolina, a quiet little town with oak-lined streets. James, 47, a war veteran who had served in Afghanistan, lived alone in a small wooden house on the town's outskirts. After years of fighting, not only on the battlefield but also within his own mind, he kept to himself, avoiding deep relationships. Until he met Elena, a gentle, sincere middle school teacher with a voice soft as falling rain. They met during a community event at the local church. She didn't try to fix James, nor did she demand that he open up. She simply was there. Patient, quiet, kind. In Elena's eyes, James saw himself differently. Not as a man weighed down by wounds, but as someone who still had value. She never said it aloud. But every time she held his hand, every time she laughed at his dry stories, every time she sat silently without judging as he spoke of his nightmares, James felt seen, understood, and loved. And then, because of that, he began to lean on her, not as a companion, but as a crutch. He expected her to heal him, to fill the emptiness inside. When she couldn't, because no one can, he grew resentful, disappointed, and pushed her away. The relationship ended. But years later, James said, "She was the first person who made me feel alive again, but I was wrong to think it was her responsibility to keep me that way." Reflection. True love isn't about finding the right person. It's about meeting someone who reveals to us the parts of ourselves we've never fully understood. To love another is to hold up a mirror. And that mirror is never smooth. It magnifies our unhealed wounds, lights up the forgotten corners of our soul, and names desires we've never dared to say out loud. Carl Jung once warned, "We think we are in love with the other person, but in truth, we are in love with the image of ourselves reflected in them." And the danger is, if we're not aware, we begin to demand they live according to that image. So we don't have to face ourselves. Love can be a place of healing, but it's not a miracle cure. If we enter love to be filled, fixed, or saved, that love will soon collapse, because no one else can do that work for us. Sustainable love only happens when we look at the other person, free from the expectation that they will complete us, and instead feel gratitude for how they helped us. See the parts of ourselves we still need to embrace. Then love stops being dependence and becomes growth. 4. When illusions fall apart, true love begins. Martha and Greg's story, Detroit, once a booming industrial city, now quiet and resilient, like the people who lived there. Martha and Greg got married at 28, back when they were still innocent and full of romantic ideals. They met at a little coffee shop when Greg had just lost his job, and Martha was nurturing the dream of opening a bookstore. The early days were sweet. Everything felt wonderful, every flaw easy to overlook. Martha loved Greg because he was a good listener, and Greg loved Martha because she made him feel inspired. But like all couples, reality eventually arrived. Greg wasn't always patient. Sometimes he was silent because he didn't know how to communicate. Martha wasn't always inspiring. Sometimes she was just a tired woman, juggling motherhood and a struggling bookstore. 10 years later, they found themselves sitting across from each other in a marriage therapy session. No more tears, no more blaming, just a long, shared fatigue. Greg said, "I used to think she was the one who would make me happy. Now I realize she's the one who grew up with me." Martha smiled gently and replied, "I used to think he was my safe harbor, but he was actually a mirror, and through him, I saw how far I've come." They didn't divorce, but they also didn't go back to what they were. They started over, not as two people madly in love, but as two human beings who understood that real love begins the moment the illusion ends. Reflection. Carl Jung once said, "Love begins as an illusion, but it only becomes real when we see the other person as they truly are, and still choose to stay." We all begin love with a dream. We see the other through a lens of hope, the perfect partner, the healer of our wounds, the one who will always understand and fulfill us. But no one can live forever under the spotlight of expectation. Sooner or later, reality knocks, and that becomes the turning point. When they no longer match the image in your mind, can you still love them as they truly are? True love doesn't begin with the promise, "I'll make you happy." It begins with the quiet acceptance. I see you clearly, and I'm still here. Not because they're no longer flawed or imperfect, but because you've grown enough to know that love isn't about finding the perfect soul, but about gently peeling away the masks and choosing to stay when the dream is gone, because true love is not when you see the best in someone, but when you see their worst and still choose to call it love. Final section, closing message and call to action. Love doesn't just teach us about others. It's one of the deepest ways to understand ourselves. So, have you ever loved someone who forced you to face parts of yourself you never dared to confront? If so, share your story in the comments below. You never know. Your experience might touch someone else who's also searching for themselves. If this video made you reflect, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you won't miss future videos about the inner journey of love through the lens of Carl Jung. See you again, in a place where stories aren't just told, but truly felt.